Welcome to the Pitmaster Podcast. We're barbecue competition competitors that aim to share information, advice, tips, and tall tales about our favorite pastime. Head over to the pitmasterpodcast.com for all things Pitmasters, or follow us on your favorite social media platform.
We won the Open in '98, and that was with 400 teams.
The thing is, when people tell me, hey, I did your recipe, and my family thinks I'm amazing now.
Right, everything in barbecue is 3-hour argument, and Jerry speak up. It's like, I'm not going to her door, and I say, Sue, got some barbecue for you. And she say, thank you, Tuffy. And it just kept going and going and going, and then as time got further along, started winning and doing real well, and then I developed my own line of rubs and seasonings, and it snowballed from there.
Damon had this ridiculous sense of being able to look at a rub and he could name it. I'll never forget. So he looks there and he goes, hey man, I see what you're doing over there. White guy does sunburned dogs in a Plowboy's bottle. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Here are the hosts of the Pitmaster Podcast, Rusty Monson, head pitmaster of Salt City Barbecue, and the two-time grand champion pitmaster of Smoke Ain't No Joke Barbecue, the Anthony Luan.
Alrighty, guys, we got the one and only Chris Lilly today on the podcast. How's it going, man?
Doing fantastic, guys. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Well, let's start at the beginning, man. Where did it all start for you as far as barbecue goes?
Gosh, I guess my first memory of barbecue was in the backyard with my dad. And it's interesting. I see you wearing a PK hat up there. That what that is?
Yep, PK.
That's my first memory of barbecue, on that cast aluminum grill in my backyard with my father. He had one of those, and those things last forever. So that was my first memory, barely peeking over the side of the PK, watching my dad, fire up the Kingsford charcoal and grill. And he loved barbecue. So I grew up not knowing how to cook it, but watching him. He was a builder. So he actually built a couple barbecue restaurants in Florence, Alabama, where I grew up. So he had a passion for barbecue, and that was my first memory. I always liked cooking and things like that, but I never did really get into barbecue and cooking until after I met my wife in college. Just so happens my wife was the great granddaughter of Big Bob Gibson.
Wow,
nice.
So you learned real quick.
Yeah, you had to learn really quick.
Yeah. So I married her and actually moved up to Franklin, Tennessee, and we were there. And I think her father, who was running the restaurant at the time, probably wanted his daughter a little bit closer. So asked me to come down, learn the business, and after a lot of thought, and it was tough. It was a tough choice, Moved to Decatur and work for my in-laws. What does that hold? You just don't know. But moved down, and they were great. Let me, make my own mistakes. Let me get back in the pit room. And that's where I started, in the pit room. I felt it odd because I didn't know a whole lot about the restaurant business, very little about barbecue as well. But in the barbecue restaurant business, it all starts in the pit room. So I didn't feel like I could go in and start telling people what to do until I learned it myself. So that's to this day, that's the place that I would rather be, in the barbecue restaurant in the pit room, than any other job. And that's where I fell in love with barbecue, in the pit room at Big Bob Gibson Bar-B-Q.
And see, that started with Big Bob Gibson back in 1925, and he would just cook barbecue every weekend and post up some wood on some trees, and people would just kind of eat some barbecue and kind of leaning up and chilling. And then it just kind of grew from there. How did that grow? How did his business grow to where it is today?
Yeah, you're exactly right. He worked for L&N Railroad. So he's a railroad guy, and did that on the weekends. And pretty soon, the lines kept growing and the people kept coming. And he just thought, I like doing this a lot more than L&N. So he quit that and opened up a barbecue restaurant with a friend. I think it's just one of those things. He loved it and knew what he was doing, and they were successful. And the restaurant kept, growing, and he'd, build a bigger place or move to a different spot, and bobbed up and down in Decatur till in the 50s he built a location that actually still stands. It just, I guess, the popularity of the barbecue. it's really neat in Decatur. You've got families and people that grew up, like children that their parents used to take them to Big Bob Gibson's, and they, remember Big Bob at the front counter giving them bubble gum. So it's really neat, the history of Big Bob Gibson's here in Decatur.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so
awesome.
you came on, you were a marketing student, and you came in to take over the barbecue restaurant. And at the time, from what I understand, all you guys really had was a vinegar sauce and that white sauce, and you kind of came and changed that game. What is your impact on the business have been since you started?
Well, let me first and foremost tell you that Big Bob Gibson and the restaurant knew what they were doing before I got there. So I want to send back accolades to all the people that I'm standing on their backs, telling them how good Big Bob Gibson's is and what a great history it was. But it didn't start with me. I will tell you that that was my father's favorite barbecue restaurant in the world. He grew up in Memphis, and when he used to go to Georgia Tech, that's where he went to college, the road went through Decatur, Alabama, and he would stop coming and going. So it's sort of ironic that I ended up at Big Bob Gibson's. But it's, and I got, so yeah, Big Bob's is, it was great before I got there. I felt like it was great, but it was regionally great. It was in this area. People knew Big Bob Gibson around here, but they didn't know Big Bob Gibson's in New York or Miami or LA or all over the country. I took what they were doing here and through competitions and other methods, built a platform to really garner publicity for Big Bob Gibson's and really spread the word. And that was a long time ago, back before the barbecue craze. We're one of the first restaurants to, start getting that national publicity for barbecue restaurants and stuff like that right before that craze started hitting.
Nice. So before we're kind of segueing into the competition stuff, but before we get over there, I want to talk about the pit room. What is the pit room like? What kind of smokers are you got going in there? What's wood? Just some basic. Take us on a virtual, I guess a tour a little bit. Yeah.
You got it. Picture the most peaceful, tranquil place you've ever been in life. Maybe for you, it's out in the woods, right before the turkeys start gobbling, and, nothing, just so peaceful and serene. That's what it's like in Big Bob Gibson's pit room. The only sound, or maybe the wood cracking, and maybe the fat rendering and hitting the coals. The wall fan, that constant hum of the wall fan pulling the smoke out. So it's such a beautiful place. We have 3 of the old-fashioned brick pits, coffin pits with the counterweighted metal lids that lift up, and a chimney on both sides of each pit that go up through the roof. We build our fire in there, use nothing but hickory wood, and load up those pits and cook all night long. For the majority of the time, our pits never get cold. They stay hot year round, except when we have to, for maintenance, and have to break down the pits to repair brick and things like that. So we've got 3 of the old-fashioned brick pits. We also got a Southern Pride in there as well. So that combination of all 4 of those do what we got to do at the restaurant.
See, I started working at Southern Pride just recently, and I like I said, our last one with Big Papa Smokers, I poo-pooed it, but I'm in love with that smoker, man. They're such great smokers. The flavor you can get out of them, I was surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We use all our pits interchangeably, and a lot of our meat takes a turn on both of those smokers, depending on what we're doing. But all of them stay hot. We do a really good business in Decatur, and it takes all of those pits to get it done.
So a couple of your accolades. It's interesting to me whenever I see someone who they kind of went the opposite route of you. Most people get into competition barbecue and then they segue into a restaurant. And then I don't know why. I've heard some people say that they're afraid to go out and lose, and that would reflect on the restaurant. But you did the complete opposite. You kind of came in and you took the restaurant and you went into the competition world, and you guys just hammered it, and you still hammer it way back when even. So you guys are basically Memphis and May champions every other year since 1997 ish.
Yeah. 1997 was our first year at Memphis. It sure was.
And so that's what kind of made you popular, is not popular, but that kind of moved maybe your business into a different, I don't know, audience maybe. Is that fair?
No, that's fair to say. It definitely is. So back in 1996, we were humming along at the restaurants. I had been there since 1991. So I had years of barbecue experience behind me, and really loved to cook. And we decided, we've got a lot of corporate, we've got 3M and Boeing and on all around us. So we do a lot of, we wanted to get into company picnics and corporate caterings and stuff like that. So initially got the portable barbecue rig for the corporate aspect around Decatur. So we wanted to get into those parties. We entered a barbecue cook-off in 1997, at the beginning of 1997, just on a whim to try to let people know that we had this to do caterings. So we entered that and actually, had a good time. And that contest, or the second contest we cook at, we won and got the automatic invitation to go cook the Memphis and May World Championship. So then, we were like hooked forever then. So initially we did it, marketing background, we did it as a promotion to get our name out, and ended up getting the invitation to the World Championship at Memphis, and we started cooking. We cooked that. In 97, we came in 10th place in Memphis. 98, we came in 5th place. In 99, we came in 1st place. So we really just got hooked. And back then, it's sort of different. It wasn't like a 14, 15 contests every weekend you can choose from. There were a handful of contests out there, and, different sanctioning bodies and things. KCBS was out there, but most of their contests were, middle of the country and west, or middle of the country, not too far west. But this is a MB or a Memphis in May. Back then, it was a Memphis in May circuit back then. It led into the Memphis in May, which is different. Now it's MBN, has nothing to do with Memphis in May. Back then, there was a Memphis in May circuit. So we cooked a bunch of those, and then we cooked some KCBS and got to the American Royal and won the Invitational there. So we basically started out, we wanted to get our name out just for the contests around here, or not the contests, but for the corporations around here. But then it turned into, once we started being successful, and we worked hard on it too. We put in the time because we wanted to hit that success, so we could use that as a platform. It's a marketing strategy, is what it was. Plus, we were having a dang good time cooking those contests, and just hanging out with people on the weekend, friends and family, and just chilling. Loved it, loved the atmosphere. But we never really ran the circuit per se. The most contests we'd ever do in a year, maybe 7, 8, 9, maybe at the very most. But we're just having a good time doing it. And that's what garnered our national publicity, where we could go out, and we got a story to tell. Big Bob Gibson has such history and a great story, but it gave me a platform to tell that story. That's what competition did for us. Nice.
So was 1999 ground zero between the starting of the duel between you and Tuffy?
Tuffy didn't come on until after that. I remember meeting Tuffy for the first time at the American Royal.
Okay.
That was, I don't think he was cooking barbecue back then. I think he was way later, maybe early 2000s, maybe. I'll have to ask him.
All right, because I know that Memphis and May, that you two are the big ones there.
I tell you what, back then it was, the teams that, when I first started, the teams that I looked up to were Tower Rock Barbecue with Pat Burke. And Pat's still around. You'll see him on occasion. Another team was the Pyro Pig Maniacs. You don't see them anymore, but gosh, George, he could cook a hell of a rib. And he did really well at Memphis and everything. Those were a couple of teams that I really, really looked up to at the time, that were winning everything. And a team called Chances Are, Buddy and Meanie Richardson. husband and wife. They could cook a hog, and they would win everything with a hog. And another player back then who was just sort of coming onto the scene, probably a little bit before me, but was still sort of green, was Myron Mixon back there. He started probably cooking competition, I'm probably guessing, 95 or so, maybe a year and a half or so before me.
I mean, so, it's not a bad way to start promoting your restaurant when you win from 97 to now, basically half of the pork places and 5 of the grand championships at basically Memphis and May, which is there's the Jack Daniels, in my opinion, which is the pinnacle of them all. But man, Memphis' May is right there. That's just crazy. You guys also reserve grand champion in Jack Daniels in 2011. Yep. And I thanks for putting on this website, by the way. I usually have to do a lot of research on this, and it's right in front of my face. But man, you have to scroll through all this stuff. I mean, you guys have it in small print too, and I'm like, womp, womp, womp. I can't get to it all. But
it's been good. It's been good.
So my question that I always kind of know, I want to know is, as a former poker player, Rounders, the movie came out and just kind of blew everything up. And before you go to the World Series of Poker, and there's 100 people, whatever, and that blossomed to more and more and more. Then Rounders came out, and there was 8,000 people in it, 9,000 people. And what seemed to me is that the whole entire face of barbecue changed after the Pitmaster show. How was that transition? What was the Pitmaster's effect to you?
That's a good and a heck of a movie, Rounders. It's right. Good. Yeah. Good pull right there, without a doubt. And Pitmasters did have a lot to do with that. Many people don't realize, even way back before Pitmasters, actually created, along with John Marcus, who was involved in Pitmasters, we created the first barbecue competition show on national television. First season was called All-Star Barbecue Showdown. Second year was called Barbecue Championship Series. And we cast some of the same characters that you see in Pitmasters. Put Myron Mixon on television as a competitor. Dr. Barbecue Ray Lampy, he was a competitor on those shows. Who else was there? There was a bunch of Mike Davis, Mike Davis, Lotta Bull. He was a competitor on those shows and won the first season, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, or second season, excuse me. But yeah. I hosted the first series and was executive producer and creator for both series. So before Pitmasters, there were a couple television series, and then John, my partner in those series, went on and started the Pitmasters, which is a very, very similar concept. But we were a little early. Pitmasters hit just at the right time. Barbecue was gaining traction across the country. Back then, in like New York City, there were 1 or 2 barbecue restaurants, but then Blue Smoke opened up. Then you started doing the Big Apple Barbecue Block Party. Actually, that was going on, just started and went big when we were doing our show. So that started to get traction. Then you started seeing restaurants just blow up in New York as far as barbecue restaurants go. And it really started garnering a lot of national publicity. Pitmasters hit at the right time. That was a couple years after that time period. And you're right. I mean, then all the teams started coming out. It gave so much publicity for not only the people on the show, but for Kansas City Barbecue Society and all the people making dry rubs and stuff. So that was the front end of that barbecue traction. I think that Pitmasters had a lot to do with that. You started seeing more barbecue on Food Network. It wasn't just Pitmasters. It was Food Network was trying to, grab the barbecue shows and stuff. So, people like Bobby Flay, they pushed him into that role, your outdoor grilling and barbecue guys. So that was the perfect timing. Pitmasters hit at just the right point where barbecue was gaining and started getting popular. Great time.
Can you still watch those shows that you talked about, the ones previous to Pitmasters? Are they available where would you find them?
You can probably get them. I've got a bunch of like DVDs back then that you could order, but yeah, you could order them online. Yeah, All-Star Barbecue Showdown and Barbecue Championship Series. They're probably still around. You can probably get them. I don't know. I don't watch them. I haven't watched them in a long time, but they're pretty fun shows.
I've heard of them. I just wasn't able to find them.
They're worth watching. It's fun.
And I get crazy.
You can see a lot. You can see a lot of similarities between that contest or that show and Pitmasters.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I can see Rusty. He's going to find those this week. We'll be watching them this weekend.
Check them out.
I've heard of them, but I couldn't find them. Someone told me about them a while ago, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to try and find them." And I didn't dig too hard. I'll find them. I will. Yeah. Trust me. This week, now that I'm back in my brain, I don't think there's a barbecue show I haven't seen yet. So
yeah, you'll see Myron Mixon as a young lad. Barbecue.
So speaking of TV shows, what's it like to sit there as a judge? Just your friends, barbecue brawl and all that stuff.
Some of the best cooks in the world.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It is fun. It's a fun gig, especially that show was really, really fun. And that the atmosphere and with the producers and everything, just laid back, and Bobby and Michael just cutting up, having a good time. So that was a good show. But when it comes to judging on those shows, whether it be Pitmaster or any of those shows on Food Network, you've got to take it serious. I mean, you just really you forget whose food it is. You really focus on the food itself. You got to be honest. You got to be, you got to be above board and give the food its due. And some people surprise you, good or bad. Some people surprise you. And sometimes it's the people you least expect that come through with the awesome stuff. So, it's different. And it's sometimes my biggest, I love it. But if it's at a cook-off, because a lot of those Pitmaster shows and things like that, you're actually set at a cook-off and things, I get a little butterflies and a little, why am I not out there cooking? It's one of those, you can't have it both ways, but when you're a cook, you always miss cooking with.
I don't know. I'm a KCBS judge, and I'm like, I'm going to cook. I'm going to judge one contest. I'm a World Food judge, a steak judge, and a KCBS judge, like SCA judge. And I just can't pull myself to do it. I'm like, if I'm going to judge it, I might as well cook it. I'm not going to go judge it. I got to cook that.
Yeah, that's right. I know. I understand totally. I get withdrawals and get just a queasy feeling in my stomach when I'm judging. Like, especially if you start eating and you say, I can do better than this. Or sometimes you eat it and you say, wow,
I'm glad I'm here.
Amazing. And you're sitting there taking notes.
Yeah.
Doing a little shigging while you're judging.
Right.
I actually signed up to become a KCBS judge, and I was thinking about it. I was like, I'm never going to judge. So I actually ended up giving my seat up to my wife. I'm like, you're going to go to this class and become a judge. She'll probably most likely judge before I ever would. So,
the best thing you can do though, if you're a cook, and is the best thing you can do is go through the judging seminar and maybe even judge a contest or two before you get out there and start cooking. Through the years, I've known several judges that have made the transition from judging to cook and done a really good job. So that's the best way to know what the judges, in competition, you're not cooking for yourself. You're cooking for the judges.
Right. Yeah.
To learn what the judges want. And that's one good way to do it.
I actually had the opportunity to help cook for a KCBS judge course a couple of years ago. So I technically sat in for it, just didn't get certified.
But judging is different. I mean, it's interesting how you can taste some profiles and you can't stop thinking about how they did that. And, it affects your rest of your judging. I didn't say that out loud. Never mind. It doesn't affect me at all. But, and then you get some bad stuff, man. And you know what to avoid. And just, it's interesting. I'm going to, but I use it for, I'm going to go to wherever, like, for example, we're going to the National Barbecue Association this year, Grilling Association. And I was going to judge that SCA contest because I wasn't going to be able to cook in it because, whatever. So it's good to have for those reasons. I can go somewhere and like, oh, hey, I'm going to go down to Big Bob Gibson's restaurant and see what the competitions are down there and judge one, So it's cool to have. And you should. He's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of jump into this competition bit because it would be obviously we lean a little bit towards the competition side, and man, you just crush it. And the cool thing is I like to note is that you kind of moved with the times. I mean, in the 90s, I feel like talking with Chris Marks and all those guys, and Myron, it was a little different ball game, and some of those guys, Myron excluded, but some can't do the competition side now. It's different, but you guys are still to this day winning competitions. So what was it? Was there a lot of curve? Or are you guys just trying to keep it old school, or do you kind of move with the time?
I think you've got to move with the times without a doubt. So the judging and what the judges are looking for now is totally different than what I started. I think you've got to check your ego. I think you've got to not only insist in your mind that my way is the best. And a lot of people do that. This is the way I've always done and I'm not going to change. And if you do that, you're not going to do well because, the judges have different taste buds and looking for things. They expect something different when they open up the box. Okay. And you're not going to hear a lot of judges say that they do or anything, but when they open it up, I think judges have a preconceived notion of what they expect in the box. And it's same way goes with tastes. A lot of time, today the taste, everybody's chasing the winners, whatever the winners are doing, they're going to try to do that same thing. So a lot of the taste gets homogenized and it's, everybody's going down the same, tunnel or going through the same tunnel. So what I try to do is stay ahead of that, do things that not everybody's doing. Maybe it's a slightly different flavor profile, but I'm lucky enough to have friends that are still cooking, a whole lot today. And a lot of times, I may reach out to them and find out what the judges are liking nowadays. And a lot of times I don't try to follow that same tunnel, but it'll give me an idea of what the judges like, whether it's a sweet or a savory or, peppery or smoky or, but you've got to give the judges what you want. You're a poker player, Rusty. So you're playing the odds. So if I turn something in ultra spicy, I may get a couple judges that absolutely love it, but I guarantee you somebody's going to be on that table that doesn't like spicy. So I've got to play the odds with the judges. I got to push flavor profiles to the limit without going over those limits. Okay, so you play the odds when you're cooking with judges, or when you're turning judges. Same way with Memphis in May. How I cook in Memphis in May pork is different than how I cook Memphis in May for KCBS contest, because I really think that the judges expect something different when they open a box. It's worked, but it's my success is not just my success. It's the people I talk to, the friends that that go out and cook a lot, that that figure out what the judges are wanting and stuff like that. Plus, it's a hell of a lot of practice, but back at the restaurant as well. I don't cook a whole lot of contests, 2 or 3 contests a year at the most, but I cook a lot of barbecue. And, whether that be for the restaurant or whether that be for the caterings and the stuff I do, for the corporate accounts all over the country, or for competition to try new flavor profiles. God blessed me with a really good palate, but there's a lot of stuff I can't do worth crap, but I can taste. And it's worked well for me.
Speaking of those corporate accounts, you got tied in with the MLB. That I'm a huge baseball fan, and when I heard about that, I was like, "That dude's lucky."
Yeah, that was so cool. That was so cool. As a matter of fact, I was expecting a little something this year, but opening day or the All-Star break. The last couple of years, I've done stuff for both opening day and the All-Star game, and gosh. I'm like a kid in a candy store too. I know exactly what you mean. I'm up there cooking, which is something I love to do, but man, I love baseball as well. And plus they're MLB sending out all these players, all of my old people that I used to watch when I was young, and they're coming out there to help me grill. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Freaking awesome. So yeah, I love that relationship. And I hate we can do another one this year, but we'll see about next.
Well, if you ever need a hand, let me know.
You got him, my friend.
We have a restaurant here called Bam Bam's Barbecue, and he caters for the New Orleans Saints, which I am sometimes I wonder if it's the Saints, then my family. I don't know how that goes.
Oh, wow.
I'm just kidding. But I don't know how I would do it. If for some reason he's like, man, I can't do it. Will you go do it? I don't know if I could. If Drew Brees come up to me, I'm like, here you go, Drew. And just shake. I wouldn't be able to do it, man. I wouldn't be able to. That's awesome though. But kind of like going back just a little bit, like it's interesting because, people do practices and they can go spend all their money on all 50 rubs that they're going to put on their ribs for competition. But I've noticed, especially taking over pitmaster duties over at Bandera, it's a lot of practice just doing normal barbecue, just like learning that tenderness and, just cooking all the time. You don't have to do competition style. You just have to cook that kind of stuff, and you start to really get a feel for it, and it comes more second nature, and it's not specifically competition recipes. It's just cooking.
Oh, that's right. I always tell people the greatness of a pit master is directly proportional to the size of their ash pile, which means the more you cook, the more ash you build up. The more you cook, the better you get. It's just one of those things. It's it's practice. It's just like anything. The more you cook it, you do it as a second thought. A lot of times when I cook, I will do things and I don't even think about it, or pull meat or turn meat, or, and a lot of times when somebody's with me, I'll almost, not tell them what I'm doing because, you don't think about it. It's, because that's what needs to be done. But you only get that from cooking a heck of a lot. And yeah, I got a pretty big ash.
And speaking of
my friend, getting bigger.
There's a video of you on YouTube right now where you're injecting pork butts, and it's the craziest thing. I watched it and I was like, he's gonna stab himself. And then you're just like, and then you do a slow motion version. I'm like, that's a lot of steps. And I mean, you go through an entire syringe like this big in 0.5 seconds. It's crazy. That's a lot of ash pile right there. So let's talk a little bit. So if you see like new cooks, you're out on anyone come up to you, what kind of advice are you giving to the new people in the circuit and competition, or just barbecue in general? What would someone, if they came to you, they saw you and, hey, Chris, man, I need some advice here. What are you telling them?
Yeah, it depends on, it depends how accomplished they are, how much they have cooked. I'll talk to a person, get to know them before I start getting them, advice. And I think that's the smart thing to do, because different people are on different levels and expect different things. And plus it lets me figure out if they are wanting me to make them feel good about their barbecue, or do they really want to learn, or do they really want, information and really want to talk barbecue? So you get all types of people. So I think first and foremost, a simple conversation with somebody really tells me a lot, helps me get to know them. Also, it helps me get to know their cooking style, because that affects a lot of what I tell them, or how I would tell them to barbecue, or the advice I'd give them. Because a lot of time it's your pit, it's your cooker and your fuel that dictate how you cook barbecue, or how you should cook barbecue. And I think getting to know a person, gives me a feel, or, I think part of barbecuing is making those mistakes and figuring out what works and what doesn't. I've made I've cooked some awful stuff before, experimenting, especially with competition, trying to get that edge. I put out some awful stuff before. So it happens to everybody.
So that leads me to another question I like to ask people. What do you think makes bad barbecue?
I think bad barbecue is, wow, that's tough, because I like all types of barbecue and all different styles and all different regional barbecues. So I'm not one to very rarely saying something is bad barbecue, but I think bad barbecue more goes to the doneness and the maybe the flavor profile in regard to smoke. Maybe those are the two things that, maybe say somebody, when you taste something, sometimes the bitterness and the creosote and the flavor profile of the smokiness and the intensity of that smoke will tell me somebody doesn't know what they're doing in regard to fire management.
So like dirty smoke is what you're leaning more towards.
Yeah. And I think, depending on your style and things like that, that dictates how you run your smoker. But yes, when I think of bad barbecue, I think of somebody not knowing what they're doing regarding managing their fire and either pulling it too soon or overcooking it. My biggest, I guess, pet peeve or barbecue sin that I see, and for me, it's pork because, I'm down here in Alabama and, I've been cooking pork for, and Big Bob Gibson, we cook the whole pork shoulders and cook a lot of butts too. But when somebody overcooks pork and it almost deflates and it almost turns out to be flat and just you can take one look at it and think, it's horrible. I mean, it's a sin. It really is a sin. But that's my biggest bad barbecue gripe, somebody overcooking and ruining a beautiful pork shoulder or pork butt.
Oh, man. My grandpa would say, put mesquite coals or mesquite wood in. That's what his big thing was. And it's just, I loved it at the time. Now looking back, I don't know, man.
Mesquite's great as long as you leave the lid up.
Yeah. Right.
I will tell you this. No. A good friend of mine, Miguel down at Valentina's Barbecue in Texas in Austin, cooks with nothing but mesquite, and he cooks some absolutely fabulous stuff. So yeah, he can pull it off, but very few people can.
I'm still partial to it, but
I think I've seen him on a food show before. He does like kind of like a Mexican style twist barbecue, doesn't he? Does like the tacos and nachos and stuff like that. Yeah. So I can see him.
Really good guy, and really talented, and cooks some amazing stuff. One of my favorite, and we're talking all of Texas, one of my favorite barbecue restaurants, Valentina's. And if you go for breakfast, order the real deal Holyfield. It is a taco. It is phenomenal.
Is it missing an ear?
I don't know why to name that. No, I taste ear or anything, but
so speaking of charcoal, this is growing up as a Kingsford guy my entire life and using it all the time, and just kind of, I've recently got into recently the past several years, but lump charcoal is kind of coming into my life and I use it, but I can't help but go back to those Kingsford coals. In our very, very first podcast episode, I talked about charcoal and I was defending the Kingsford, the Kingsford flavor and all that stuff. I know you're a Kingsford guy. Talk a little bit about why you use like Kingsford specifically over, let's say, any other kind of lump charcoal.
I gotcha. So really, we talked about a little bit ago that what you're cooking on determines the fuel that you use. My style of cooking is cooking directly over coals. I like the fat dripping onto the coals, hitting the coals, almost giving you a charred, moisture, extra flavor profile. It's definitely my style. But I started using, my father used Kingsford as one of those. A lot of people, started that way. But I was using Kingsford back before I was working with Kingsford. I used it in competition. That's sort of what got us together. So I like the flavor profile of charcoal. Also, in what I do, I travel all over. I'm cooking in New York and Miami. I'm traveling out west cooking for NASCAR at the Sonoma track, or I'm going everywhere. I've got to have a charcoal that's consistent. I've got to have a charcoal that I can get anywhere I go. For me, Kingsford's the most consistent charcoal out there. And if I buy a bag in Texas or Montana or Miami Beach, it's going to be the same charcoal and it's going to be just consistent. They do an excellent job on keeping consistent. So I know it's going to cook the same. So when I'm doing a big of, when Microsoft hires me to go do a huge catering for them, I don't want any second guesses. I can't screw it up. If I screw it up, that's it. It's my last gig I'll ever get to do for them. So I've got to have something that I can depend on, not only on a consistent burn time, but a consistent flavor profile. So in competition, I've always used a combination of hickory wood and Kingsford charcoal. The blue bag in competition using the Jedmaster cookers that I use. But again, the cooker dictates what you use. So, if I'm cooking on a big green egg or something like that, I'll use like a Kingsford Professional, which is basically just a compressed lump charcoal, all natural. So I get the quick light and the high heat of lump charcoal, but I get the extended burn time that you get from a compressed briquette. If I'm cooking, steaks out in the back, depending on what I'm cooking them on. If I'm cooking on something really, really close, I'll probably use a blue bag or something like that. But if it's further away, I might use a Kingsford Professional. I can get a lot higher heat. So what I'm cooking on, the temperature I'm cooking, if I want to sear some, tuna or some salmon out there, I'm grabbing the hot stuff, and I'm going to get that and, sear on it. But for me, it's all about flavor profile and it's all about the style. And for me, Kingsford, and I've tried everything. For me, I can't get a better flavor on my pork and on my barbecue than cooking over anything but a combination of Kingsford charcoal and wood. For my preference, it's hickory. If you pin me down further than that, it's a 6-month-old dry-aged hickory. My favorite is pig nut or shagbark limbs, the types of hickory. So, when you're cooking competition, you got to control to be consistent. These little competition as I do, I've got to control every factor to produce a championship. So it goes back down to the wood you use, the charcoal you choose, the cooker, the humidity, everything about it. It's got to be consistent from cook to cook, so you get the same result. So I'm really, really particular about everything that I do. And that's where the consistency comes in. And Kingsford is the base of that, without a doubt.
My man,
Nice.
Like Kingsford and hickory, you just spoke my language. That's my jam right there. Those two combinations. And I've tried everything too. And we did so well using those, we used Professional and we just stopped and started using, some lump and all that stuff. And we went back in Montana and we reserved Grand Champion. I'm like, man, we're Kingsford next year. That's just the bottom line. So
yeah, and look, I don't knock anybody that uses other doesn't use charcoal, uses all wood. Really, it's the cooker that dictates, and it's your flavor profile. What do you like? I just like that flavor. I like it, and it's my style of cooking. So go back to good barbecue and bad barbecue. I rarely ever have bad barbecue, and I can appreciate different styles and different cooking methods and pits. And there's so many to mention out there. Just like hanging out and cooking barbecue with my buds. So, it's all good, but that's what works for me.
Yeah.
Right. So speaking of pork, a lot of people make a mistake on picking out pork. Can you talk us through on how to make sure you pick the proper pork products when you're at the grocery store?
Yeah, definitely can do that. And it's actually something that we realized, because, we're cooking, we're cooking so many pork shoulders every day. And sometimes your pork is just better than others. So over the years, and we talked about wood a little bit ago. Yeah, I know which wood I like better because of the same reason, but sometimes your pork's better than others. And you trace it back to a couple different factors. And this is something that I knew even before I started working with National Pork Board. And it goes back to color and marbling. And those are the two factors that you need to look at when you pick out pork. So when you go to the grocery store, a lot of folks don't know that pork is graded. Beef is graded and it says on the label, select or choice or prime, and things like that. But pork, it's not on the label. But if you look at it, you can tell it's color and marbling. So you're looking for something that is a reddish pink color as opposed to a pinkish red color. So typically when I pick out pork from Memphis in May, and I'm saying, well, this is a beautiful butt or pork shoulder. This is going to be a preliminary. My best pork shoulder that I pick is what I hold for the final judges. But I know before I put that on, which is the best pork shoulder, just by looking at it and its color and marbling. It's a deep red color. It's a reddish pink color as opposed to the pinkish red. That gives you more moisture retention on your cook. It'll hold more moisture, it'll hold more water through the long cooking process. And the other is marbling. Just like beef, the more marbling, the more fat striations, the better, the juicier, the tastier that the pork will be. So color and marbling, only two things you look at when picking out a pork butt or pork shoulder or ribs or anything else.
So ribs would be the same, a dark red color?
Mm-hmm. You don't want it blood red. So blood red will give you mushy. It's still going to hold a lot of moisture, but the texture is going to be a little bit different.
I know.
Sometimes you see that pork chop or that rib that is almost just blood red. I would hold off to grabbing that. You want more of a reddish pink. But generally the redder it is, the better it is.
And I've heard that. I just never knew why. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Holds more moisture.
That's
juicier.
Awesome. Huh.
Nice.
Well, then. Well, I'm not cooking pork against you in the Memphis in May. We're going to try and go this year. Well, Memphis in what, November this year?
I think it's like October 1st, maybe September, October 1st. It is. No. Yeah, that's right. So I think it's the American Royal, and then you skip a weekend, and then Memphis in May.
Yeah, we're going to try and go. I don't know what we're going to cook. If you guys are there, we're not
come
cooking pork. I'm going to cook ribs. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to cook a whole hog. Screw it.
There you go.
You never even cooked one before, Rusty.
I will in Memphis in May. No, but so that's really cool. I did not know that at all. That's awesome. So what do you think is the most important thing? All of us kind of had that aha moment when it comes to barbecue. What was yours when you just kind of learned? What was something you learned that was just like, oh, this changed the game for me?
In competition?
It doesn't matter, just in barbecue.
All right. I'll do it in competition. So it was my first contest that I ever cooked. No, it was my second contest that I ever. No. Take that back. It was my third contest I ever cooked. So it was the contest I was doing right before Memphis in May. I'd never been to a Memphis in May before, and I was cooking pork, and it was back to the story where I won the automatic to go to Memphis in May and cook the world championships. Back then, if you did well in the contest, that contest would pay your way to Memphis to cook, pay your entry fee. So I did right before Memphis, I said, I've got to practice. So I entered a contest and was in Mississippi, and I went over there and cooked it. And I was cooking next door to Pat Burke with Tower Rock. And Pat Burke, if you follow him back, he used to cook with Mike Mills in Apple City. So it's Mike Mills and Pat Burke.
Chicago or Illinois.
So I was cooking next to him, and he won, and I came in second. And he invited me over after the contest and let me try his pork. And that one taste, I tasted that pork, and I knew without a doubt, one, he won and he should have won. And two, if I didn't do something drastically different, there was no way I ever beat him.
Wow.
So that one bite right there totally changed my vision and gave me something to shoot for. And that one bite turned my whole competition barbecue around.
Did he tell you what he did? Or you're just like, this is no. Now you know the Holy Grail exists. You just don't know where it is.
Well, like I said, I would say he made the mistake of letting me try it. And
you got the taste buds to remember that.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about that earlier. So yeah, I got some good taste buds, and yeah, I knew instantly that it was so good and it was better than mine. And he rightly won that contest. And so yeah, it put me to work and made me change my entire flavor profile and concept. And yeah, it gave me a new avenue to go down. So yeah, that's what turned it for me.
Well, Rusty's doing the same thing. I let him try my barbecue, and he's been chasing me since. So.
I gained a lot of confidence in what I was doing. That's what happened. I was like, "Oh, that's the competition." Okay, we guys call and practice off. We're good. We just need to just cook. It's fine.
Oh man, yeah.
So I've actually read a book of yours. I thought was really awesome. It's the Big Bob Gibson's Barbecue Cookbook, but it's also a cool book to read. You have 2 books out now that talk about those for a second.
Yeah, definitely the first one. It's so sentimental, and that it's about family. It's about my wife's family. It's about Big Bob Gibson. It's about the lessons that I learned when I first started cooking in the pit room at the barbecue restaurant. So yeah, very sentimental to me. A lot of family recipes and family stories and history of the restaurant itself, and a lot of technique and things like that. A lot of recipes that have been passed down through the family. So yeah, that was my first one, and it's interesting writing a book. That's a full-time job, guys. It's crazy, especially if you're going to write it yourself. And I felt like I had to, because yeah, I could talk to a writer and dictate or tell them what I want. And I'm going to be writing it anyway, so I thought I should do it myself. But yeah, that book is really sentimental. It's the basics of barbecue. It's the tried and true. It's the old school. Majority of that one is low and slow. My next book, Fire and Smoke, it's about a 50-50. There's a lot of hot and fast recipes there. It's all outdoor grilling, so every recipe from the desserts to the side dishes to the cocktails to the old school barbecue, it's outdoors, it's barbecue, it's fire, it's smoke. So, 2 different books. Fire and Smoke is a lot of the recipes that I started doing when I started doing caterings and traveling and things like that. Big Bob Gibson Bar-B-Q book is definitely old school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a cool read. I liked it a lot. When I was doing the restaurant thing, I read it. It's a good for that, because there's not a lot out there like it. But that was a good one. So if you guys just pick them up, just a cool read. It's way cool. I haven't got to the second one yet, but you said that was more of a just straightforward smoking, grilling, all that fun stuff, more recipe based.
It's about 50-50, on direct grilling and things like that. A lot of utilization of different types of grills as well in that book. So that's the one that got me in trouble with my wife. When you start looking in the garage and looking on the back porch at all the different cookers, things like that. So yeah. So yeah, the books, and they're fun. They're good, but gosh, it's a lot of work between the writing the books and and hiring the photographer and doing the photo shoot and cooking all the recipes. It's a lot of work. It's because I didn't want to mail in anything. All the recipes, without a doubt, are done and done again and tweaked and yeah, a lot of my blood, sweat, and tears in those books.
So you can order those books. You can also, right now, you guys have, of course, you guys are famous for the Alabam White Sauce. That's, where it originated, was the Big Bob Gibson restaurant. But you guys have a series of things you guys can order online. What right now, what can people get if they're not from Alabama? How can someone from not Alabama eat your food or your sauces?
Appreciate you bringing that up. So yeah, go to bigbobgibson.com. That's our website right there. And you can not only order our sauces, our championship red sauce and white sauce, habanero sauce, and our dry rubs as well, but you can also order our food. So we're shipping our barbecue, whether it be whole chickens and barbecue white sauce, our ribs, or our pork shoulder with the same recipe that we use at Memphis in May, or turkey, or chicken wings and things like that. We're shipping that all over the country, and it's a busy time nowadays. Everybody's stuck in their house and nothing to do but surf the internet and order. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we'll ship it to your door. It is safe. You don't even have to get out of the house. Yeah, just
nice.
Yeah, it's been good, and it's that our mail order has enabled me to keep a couple of more employees and really work them on packaging, teaching them how to cook and package and things like that, and working with us, packaging those. I was actually packing this morning. We did a big pack day today, so I was over there. That's how I spent most of my day today. But yeah, we're in Decatur. We've lucky for us, we've got drive-through business at both restaurants, so our drive-throughs are humming. We unfortunately, like everybody else, have had to shut the dining room down, but we picked up a little bit with mail order. So mail order and drive-through service, we're still cooking barbecue, hadn't slowed down. But the best thing is we've been able to keep most all of our employees, and we're working with them with their hours to try to justify that.
That's awesome, man. I grew up in the restaurant business, and I know how hard it is and how people are getting hit right now. So that's actually really cool to hear, because that's not the case 90% of the time right now. I had to order some of that. I didn't know you can order the food. I'm no joke, literally doing that right now. So will you package mine up, get ready, because you'll see it tomorrow. I have to eat that. That's amazing. But we're still coming out to you. We actually have a plan to head out there. I wanted to go and do a little barbecue tour, and that's on the list. So I'm excited.
Yeah, come see me, my friend.
So anything else we can look forward to with you and what you're doing?
I could have told you a lot before, back in February when I had big plans for the spring.
Good point.
But everything's canceled.
That's true.
Oh, I was so busy, and everything got canceled. So right now, everything's in limbo. Everything that got canceled, we're going to postpone it. We're going to push it to the fall, but we'll see. We'll see. Definitely Memphis in May rescheduled. So I'll definitely do the Memphis in May in the American Royal. But all the cool stuff that I was doing this spring, going to miss the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, and did make Charleston Food and Wine earlier this year. And let's see what else. Going turkey hunting with Yeti, and to do something really, really cool, and maybe some recipes and stuff to follow. But like a little wild turkey hunting and stuff like that. So we're going to do that. I can still self-quarantine myself in the woods. So plus, that's always a plus. So that's coming up. I had a huge fishing trip. I was going up to British Columbia to do a catering up there at West Coast Fishing Club up there, and do a week long fishing trip and hanging out up there. And that's in June. I don't know. Who knows? Probably not going to happen. But maybe I'll push that till next year up there too, to go back up with those guys and do that catering. So. A lot of stuff I'm missing.
Oh man.
Well, I don't know. Same with me. We were but we had all sorts of stuff coming up this in Utah, and it was great, man. But
not anymore. This weekend.
Yeah, it was all going to start this weekend. I was really excited about it. But it is what it is, and guess what? I get to cook a lot of cool stuff, so that's where I'm at with it. Yeah. But so what's the website we can find you at?
BigBobGibson.com.
Any social medias or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's Chris Lilly BBQ across all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Yeah, Chris Lilly BBQ.
Cool. That's awesome, man. Great. Thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. You're just a living legend in our mind, everyone's mind, and we appreciate you taking the time for us and chatting with us, answering our questions. And I learned a lot, and I'm sure the people that are listening learned a lot too. So we really appreciate your time.
All I do is cook barbecue, just like all your listeners. So no doubt. I just appreciate you inviting me on the show. I've really had a good time talking to y'all.
Cool. Well, appreciate it.
You're gonna come see me, right? Both of y'all come see me in Decatur, okay?
Oh, it's happening. We have plans. They had plans more tentatively. We had solid plans, but now they're more. We'll see. December.
All right. And I'll come see that whole hog in Memphis. All right.
You do it. You will. You just watch me wave from the from the stage with my big, I'm sorry, everyone. I'm the new guy, and I just want whole hog at Memphis. Man.
There you go.
All right, brother. Well, appreciate it.
I'd like
to
see it.
All right, Chris, great talking to you. You have a good one, man. And you stay safe.
Take care, guys.
All right.